Hey, Resolve to Read readers. I just wanted to drop a quick video and just check in on you and see how you're doing. And then for those who join our class on Fridays at 2 p.m., we will still be meeting. However, I have a few work items that I need to do, unfortunately, tomorrow that I cannot move, so I won't be able to start our live stream for those who join or start our Zoom call, who for those of us who join on Zoom. So that's why I'm recording this video because I did want to connect with you. And I just, want to encourage you as you're reading through, and there's a lot of stories. In fact, most of the Bible is narrative, which means that it's just like, hey, here's what happened. This happened, and this happened, and this happened. And each book of the Bible has an author, and that author has determined which stories to include, which details of that story to include, and in what order and what to emphasize. Some parts of the story the author spends more time on. Other parts of the story, it just kind of moves through quickly. And so it's good to pay attention to notice when the author slows down, or when things seem to be brought out that seem maybe more important to the author, and always to ask yourself, why is this story here? What is the purpose of this here? And a lot of it's going to point back to, remember, the promises that God made to Abraham. And he said that all nations would be blessed through his seed, and that kings would come from him, and how that almost didn't happen because Isaac was his only son with Sarah, and God even asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, but God stopped him. So we see that God's promises are going to continue to be fulfilled as we continue to read scripture and to read that. And we're going to have lots of different authors writing, and it's all going to be connected. And I like to call that a miracle, not just coincidence. I'll let you decide for yourself on that. Now, some of these narratives can be a little disturbing because there are details in people's lives that just are like, when I think about a godly person doing that, I go, ooh, I don't know if that seems very godly. Well, that's because these are accurate representation of people. People make mistakes, they do wrong things, and I think that's what makes these writings authentic, because they don't whitewash people's faults. And it's interesting to note, as we're reading through now, we call them the historical books. They're going to include all the failures of these kings that actually come from the line of the promised seed, the line of David, the tribe of Judah. We're going to see so many faults, and yet God's plan continues through that line. I'm taking a class right now, and we're studying an Old Testament book, specifically Genesis, and then also looking at, because Genesis is all narrative, so we have to understand how to read narrative in order to interpret it correctly. And my teacher had some really interesting things to say about that in his notes, so I just wanted to read that to you. So when we're reading narrative, he says, the author does not necessarily pause and provide a moral evaluation of its characters in every story. So like, we might be reading the story of David and Absalom and be like, David, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you step in? And we see that with his other sons. You might say, you're not being a great father figure. But the narrative doesn't always give us a moral analysis of each person's actions. It's just saying, here's what happened. This seems to be intentional, as his purpose is not to simply evaluate their every move, but rather to highlight the work of God despite their actions. So that's kind of the important thing, is that we're looking at, what is God doing despite humans who are interfering all the time. Like when I think back to Abraham and Sarah tried to interfere with God's plan and said, hey, here, take my slave Hagar, and you sleep with her and have a baby. And God's like, nope, nope, we're not doing it that way. And so God's plan will keep going on no matter what people do to try to intervene. So all these stories move the reader toward the larger arena of God's work among his people and the nations. This means that sometimes these narratives are allowed to be somewhat messy and end with unexpected resolutions, as we see like with the story of David and Absalom. That's what we just read this past week. We, as the readers, must allow the text to take us where the author desires without forcing upon them what we believe should be the ending of their teachings. So, this is a lot to take in here. And, if you're just getting started, don't worry, just read it. I believe God's going to show you what you need to know as you're reading it with a heart of faith. And so always reach out to me if you have questions or, on our Facebook page, email me, call me, text me anytime if you're reading and you're just not sure about something. I'd love to chat with you. All right, guys, have a great week reading. We'll see you next time. Bye.